I am Nadia,
And I am Andrea.
and you are watching Tech News.
Hi, I am Nadia and I am here with Natalia, who is a tour guide. So, hi Natalia, what can you tell us about this place? Well, right now we are at the Catacomb of Priscilla. In places like this, where cemeteries underground, this is where early Christians used to meet to practice their faith. They chose this place because they were sacred for them, so they shouldn't be trespassed. So they could be here without the fear of having a Roman prosecutor after them. And also because of the monotheism, they couldn't acknowledge the existence of other gods. This is why this movement of Christianity remained secret for the first 300 years. Oh, very interesting. But why was this religion so appealing to so many people? Well, you'll see, Jesus predicated a message based on comprehension, forgiveness, and loving each other, making their statements in a sacred book, which is called the Bible. Oh, alright. So what can you tell us about some of their traditions? Well, one of their first rituals was the representation of the Last Supper. In the Bible, Jesus Christ gave them the wine and bread, representing their flesh, his flesh and blood. So they do this every year in the anniversary of his death. Oh, very symbolic. So what can you tell us about Christian art? Well, it had three main branches. Well, first there was no interest in the human body, like adding anything divine to it. They represented God in a human body. Also, it shows the greatness of Jesus Christ. The paintings tell the story of the miracles he made, and also it serves as a model. In the paintings, they showed the deeds you should do in order to obtain salvation through Christianity. Well, very interesting. I've also heard about something called Gothic art. What can you tell us about that? Well, Gothic comes from, it refers to the Germanic tribes that invaded Greece and Italy and plagued Rome before Christ. So the gods were blamed for destroying what remained of the classic style. So when you associate paint or architecture, well, with this kind of style, you're saying that it destroyed something very important for our tradition. And some of the most important architectonic concepts of these styles, they were used especially in churches and cathedrals, like for example, ribbed vaults, pier, flying buttresses, point arches, stained glass windows, and such. Well, thank you so much. Very curious information. Thank you for your time. Yeah, sure, anytime. Thank you. Hi, I'm Dr. Michelle Marroquin. Now we will talk about what is Renaissance. It firstly started in Italy and it has three different periods. The first is Quattrocento, which Middle Ages artistic style was ending. Secondly is the High Late Renaissance, where artists were inspired developing a human approach. There was considered the human like the center of the world. Then happened the Late Renaissance, where visual artists were inspired by Michelangelo and Da Vinci's, but they tried to compete with their paintings, but they were inspired by it. So these periods are affected by a series of social and economic factors, which I will mention. The first is archaeological rest from the Roman culture. The second is the city-states. And the third one is the creation of maenads. Some of the characteristics of this period were a new idea of beauty. For a typical example of this, you can look at Da Vinci's Vivian Man, which is a drawing of the human body in where Da Vinci explained a lot of proportions based on the work of an architect called Vitruvialism. People should live and create their own way of living, being proud of what they do and not getting worried about people who are influenced to say about the church. Then is the naturalism. New techniques arise in order to recreate this world. Our world and translates the perception into reality and into art. The perspective. There is the artwork. It starts to have a three-dimensional look that makes the viewer feeling more real. Portions. Moreover, dimensions are needed to have an order that reflects the human intellect, controlling its environment. Another characteristic of architecture was the preoccupation of how to build the churches. They believed that the circle was the perfect form, so they searched a way to incorporate it in the architecture because they believed it was the association it with divinity. People were open to new artistic manifestations and innovations. One of the architects influenced by these principles was Donato Bramante, who made the Tempietto, a place that shows the exact location in which Saint Peter was crucified. This place is one of the greatest examples of the harmony and order of the Renaissance art. artists try to express. The circle, which has no beginning and no end, can symbolize the perfection and eternal nature of the god. Then I continue with painting. The painting in this period was characterized by three different things. The first one is the new techniques and materials. The use of tempera was very popular, a paint made of dry pigments and colors, which are mixed with a binding material. Then is the different themes. The life of Jesus, Mary's, and the saints were again popular themes, but also themes such as individualism and anthropocentrism. Then I continue with the perspective. The artists portrayed their subjects in a more realistic way, using light, shadows, movements, and vanishing point. Okay, then I will continue with the sculpture. Some general characteristics of the sculpture in this period were the following. There are four principles of this one. The first one is the use of different materials such as bronze and marble. The second one is the different themes, were addressed not only religious, but also methodological and profane. The third one is medieval themes, were represented in an allegorical way. And the fourth one is an inspiration from classical models.
Hernán Cortés put the first stone for the construction of it. Also, a symbolic act to establish that the new order and power were the Spaniards. The cathedral was finished until 1813. One of the most important architects in this period was the Spaniard Manuel Tolsa. He was responsible for the introduction of neoclassicism to the New Spain. Neoclassicism tried to return the classic forms of the Greeks and Latins with a relaxed sense of order and proportion. The Palace of Mines is a building designed and created by Manuel Tolsa. This place is used nowadays as the School of Engineering from the National Autonomous University of Mexico, or UNAM. This place is a masterpiece of Latin American neoclassicism and a majestic monument of elegant forms and exact proportions where light, space, and functionality merge, and is one of the most outstanding constructions within Mexican architecture. He's going to talk about the Baroque and some of its characteristics.
Well, the Baroque period reacts against the Renaissance, so there's no way any characteristics of the Renaissance are going to be similar to the ones from the Baroque period. The images depicted are direct and obvious, so there are less space for allegories or metaphors, but in some cases they are just like in Vermeer's The Art of Painting. The settings are extravagant. The emotions portrayed are intense, and psychology was important in this movement. Characters seem to be affected by what is happening in the work of art. So there are a lot of emotions in every sculpture and painting in this period.
And what can you tell me about sculptures?
Well, Gian Lorenzo Bernini was one of the most influential sculptors from this period. His sculptures are vivid, intense, and all of their characters show strength and movement. Some of his work are Pluto and Proserpina, or Rape of Persephone, David and Ecstasy of Saint Teresa, E4 Fontaine by Francesco Borromini, Piazza of St. Peter by Gian Lorenzo Bernini, and Palazzo Carignano by Guarino Guarini. Important characteristic of paintings in this period is that there is no central figure to look at. Some examples of paintings from this period are The Maids of Honor by Diego Velázquez, which in Spanish is called Las Meninas, The Crucifixion of St. Peter by Caravaggio, and The Art of Painting by Johannes Vermeer.
Pre-classic, classic, and post-classic.
What is the Archaic era?
The Archaic era is a time in every culture in which they start living their nomadic ways and begin to be sedentary. It started about 10,000 years before Christ and lasted about 6,000 years. In this period, humans made new technologies such as bladed projectiles and axes. One of the most important findings in Mexico was the Tepexpan man, a skeleton.
And what about the Preclassic era?
The Preclassic era started 2,500 years before Christ and ended 200 years after Christ. People in this time started the practice of agriculture and pottery.
Villages were created and labor was divided. Trade commerce emerged and people started complex religious systems. Olmecs were the main civilization of this time. They were known as the River People, and their main centers were San Lorenzo, La Venta, y Tres Zapotes. The most representative art was the giant head sculpture,
People in this era saw the
which
increase of new
was
agriculture
the way they
techniques
represent their
and an
belief
increasing
that the
population.
head bore the
New
soul.
social, economic, politics, and religious systems were created. In this period, the Mayan culture perfected mathematics, astronomy, architecture, and visual art. They also created the calendar. The Mayan culture was one of the few civilizations that used zero as a number, and their numeric system was based in units of 20.
What is the post-classic era?
The post-classic era started 1,000 years after Christ and ended when Hernan Cortes arrived to Mexico. The Aztecs, also called Mexicas, founded their city in the Lake Texcoco, where they found an eagle eating a snake and named it Tenochtitlan. They controlled all other civilizations such as Mixtecs, Huastecs, and Totonacs.